So, this video is going to be about how I studied for the MCAT in 2 months. First disclaimer, I don't recommend studying for the MCAT in 2 months. Give yourself a little bit more time, especially if you have other commitments. I was lucky enough to not have too many commitments for the second month of those 2 months, so I was able to kind of give 9 to 5 to studying. The reason why I did it is just that I was finishing up all my prerequisites at that point, and I didn't want to put off any of that learned knowledge and risk not remembering it as well as I would have if it were fresher in my mind in this case. I finished biochemistry in the very beginning of August, and since the MCAT isn't offered in October, November, or December, I figured it made more sense to just go for it and take it on the last possible day in September. So I took it on September 14th, and I started studying on July 14th. That's the day that I signed up for the online Kaplan course, and I started doing the free daily MCAT question by Kaplan. That was that day. When I started the Kaplan course on the 15th, I did the diagnostic test on the 16th and got a 499. Not where I wanted to be. So basically the rest of July at that point was my content review. I watched a YouTube video that said for 1 month beforehand, just do practice tests and really hit those hard, and I thought that was pretty good advice. So that's what I did. But currently, in the end of July and the beginning of August, I did content review via Kaplan. I didn't actually take any of the online courses. I looked at one of them, but it was kind of long and just kind of looked like a bad Skype call. So I didn't do any of those. But I did do a lot of Kaplan, a lot of reading the books. A lot of Khan Academy, a lot of reading the books of Kaplan, and basically just looking over my notes and doing other self-study things online. I did about 4 or 5 section tests for this first month just to get down the timing of doing an hour and a half of testing. And after I would go over every question, and something that I found really helpful was to Google everything that I did not know. If I didn't feel very comfortable with something, I would Google it and make sure that I knew what it was and make sure that I could explain it in the future. So that was key. That was the rest of July, and then come August 14th, I had done about 4 or 5 section tests up to this point and the diagnostic, and that was it. So with 1 month left to go, I followed the advice of that YouTube video and just hit the practice tests super hard. Throughout August, I did 7 practice tests under conditions, which means I went to the library, I had a snack, water, and sat down by myself in a room trying to make it as decently quiet as possible and sat through the whole MCAT as if it were the real thing. I cannot emphasize enough how important that is, because that is the MCAT. If you can simulate testing conditions, you'll be so much more comfortable when it comes down to it, and you'll know your timing, you'll just feel the clock. It's horrible. It's really tough to force yourself through 4 sections, especially at first. I remember the first time I tried to do it, I don't think I did it, and I just ended up doing 1 test half and half, which is fine. Make sure that you're not driving yourself insane over this, but if you can get down a good number of practice tests under real conditions, that is probably the biggest tip that I could provide you. Throughout this time, it was basically every week I was doing 2. On average, it was a little bit less than that, but I would do the practice test one day, and then over the course of 2 or 3 days, I would go over it with a fine-tooth comb, just doing the same thing, Googling every topic that I didn't understand, and also making notes to myself on a notebook just so that I was kind of aware of my mistakes. I think that's really helpful to do. I was lucky to have my school provide this Kaplan course, and with the Kaplan course, I also got access to the 3 AAMC practice exams. I think there are now 4, but the 3 that they give you are the most like the real thing. The Kaplan tests, in my opinion, are a little bit harder than normal because they have that higher score guarantee where they want you to score higher on the real thing so that you kind of see a higher score and they guarantee it, which is fine. I think it's helpful it's like a drag suit, or it's like running with a parachute. You're slowing yourself down and you feel like you're not crushing it, but when you see your score, Hopefully you did crush it. If you really want a good example of the real thing, look at the AAMC ones. For reference, I was scoring mid 500s on the Kaplan tests, and then all the AAMC tests, I did a 509, a 509, and a 5. And on my last AMC test, I got a 512. I was lucky enough to do a little bit better than my most recent AAMC practice test on the real thing. So even though it was 2 months, I still think it was successful, and it definitely worked for me. So my last test was September 5th, and up through the rest of those 9 days until September 14th, I just did the section banks on AAMC's website, where you just do kind of reading sections and answering 5 or 6 questions of all the subjects. So I did psych, bio, everything basically that they offered, I would do it. And I was still doing the Jack Weston, and I was even doing the cars on AAMC as well, just to make sure that I was still not forgetting how to take this test. But I really didn't want to take any more practice tests with less than a week to go, because that just felt like too much information. Final note, when I took the real MCAT, I felt basically terrible throughout. And even when I was leaving, I was like, I have no idea. I have no idea what I got. It could be anywhere. And that's just, I think, the nature of the test, that you could feel very uneasy about your score until you get it. And my advice there is, do not void your score unless you were in the bathroom and you lost track of time, or you got locked out of the test center, or something crazy happened, because you could think the worst, but you could still end up with a great score. So make sure that you at least get to see the score that you put in the hard work for, because even if it's not exactly what you want and you plan on taking it again, med schools, I think, like to see improvement. So it's not the worst thing if you take it not happy and you take it again and you crush it. So you can do this. Good luck. The MCAT is like a sponge. It will take all the time that you can possibly give it. That being said, you don't have to give it every hour of every day, especially if you're working, or if you're taking classes, or if you're doing something else. That's totally fine. Make sure you strike a balance with it, and it may take you longer than 2 months to study for the MCAT, and perhaps you have all the time in the world and you're not doing anything else, and you could do it in less than 2 months. I'm not saying that this is the mold that fits everybody, but this is what I did.